Good morning, guys. Today we'll talk about the introduction to environmental health. So, what is environmental health? So, it's the control of those factors in man's physical environment which exercise or may exercise a deleterious effect on his physical development, health, or survival. That's according to the World Health Organization. It is the aspect of public health that is concerned with those forms of life, substance, force, and condition in the surrounding of man that may exert an influence on human health and well-being. So the priority for environmental health problems are solid waste. So yung mga issues doon yung implementation kung paano itatapon yung mga basura, kung halimbawa, nagkaroon ng problema sa pag-storage ng basura. So, it will have an effect to us. Halimbawa, kumalat yung mga leachants sa water or sa air. So, it will affect our drinking sources. Halimbawa, sa water, yung mga waterborne diseases, yung mga bacteria such as E. coli, or yung mga toxic chemicals na tinatapon ng mga factories. So air, another environmental hazard is air, which is the deteriorating quality of air, especially in urban environment. So as you can see, sa dami-dami ng factory na nangyayari, ang dami-daming kotse, so nag-increase ang mga pollutants natin sa air, which contribute to further aggravation ng asthma and other health diseases. So toxic substance and hazardous substance incident of disease and injury from exposure to toxic and hazardous substance, environmental health, incident of environmental health and occupational health related diseases and injury, food, in the inadequate national capacity to monitor and safeguard food safety and sanitation. So programs of sustainable sanitation and wastewater management inadequate sustain. So yun ang priority natin sa environmental issues. Solid waste, water, air, toxic substance, occupational health, and food and sanitation. So, so here's the health triad. Host, environment, and agent. So ang host, yung organism where kung saan nagmumultiply ang um, infectious diseases such as yung mga bacteria, viruses, parasites. Yung agent naman, kung saan nagmumultiply ang bacteria. So basically host, ito tatandaan nyo, host, organism where the infection agent will multiply. Agent, on that, magmumultiply siya doon. It affects the host. And environment is the condition and location of the contact where the host and agent meet. So, ano ba relationship between environment and tao? So, as you can see here, ito yung diagram on how it affects one another. So, for example, tao nag-pollute sa dagat or sa drinking supply. So, maapektuhan tayo sa health natin kasi makakakonsume tayo ng kung ano-anong baka bacteria or toxic chemical. Not just us, but also the animals that we consume and the plants that we consume. So talagang buong biodiversity maapektuhan sa mga actions natin. Halimbawa, yung mga plastic bottles. Yes, nag-produce tayo ng maraming plastic bottles. So it takes 800 years bago ma-decompose ang isang plastic. So familiar naman kayo sa term ng microplastic, correct? Alright. Ang microplastic, so paano kung na-ingest natin yung mga microplastic? So it will have an effect rin sa ating kalusugan. Hindi pa natin alam kung ano talagang epekto nun since we're just recently discovering the term microplastic. So next, what major health hazard do we need to face? So people face a lot of health hazard from biological, chemical, physical, and cultural, and from the lifestyle choice that we make. So in this table, risk assessment, so what is hazard? Anong probability na mangyayari yon at anong consequence? So, yung risk management, I think, comparative risk analysis, kung anong risk niya, risk reduction, uh, risk reduction, paano siya mababawasan yung mga pollution, magkano bang gagastusin. So, ito yung mga hazard na sinasabi ko ngayon. So, classification of environmental hazard. So, we have biological, chemical, physical, sociological, and site location. Okay. So, pag sinabi natin biological, siya yung mga bacteria, mga parasite, anything na living things. Bacteria, parasite, fungi. So, the most serious na kinakaharap natin sa biological hazard ay yung mga AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria. So, it affects the human being. So, there's two types of diseases. So, communicable, yun yung mga nahawag from the bacteria and mga parasite. While yung non-communicable, yun yung mga heart attack, yung mga hindi nakakahawa. Mga brain stroke, diabetes. So, paano natin mapre-prevent ang mga infectious disease? Every year, at least 3.2 million ang namamatay dahil sa pneumonia. 2 million dahil sa AIDS. 1.8 dahil sa tuberculosis, and etc. So, paano natin siya maiiwasan? Yung mga infectious disease. Una, pababain natin ang poverty. Improve natin yung drinking water, bawasan natin yung paggamit ng antibiotics, bigyan natin ng immunization yung mga kabataan natin, mga bata, yung mga anti-vaxxers dyan, please lang, hindi kayo nakakatulong. Pero bakit kailangan natin i-immune ng bata? Siyempre, halimbawa, may mga disease tayo na pwede namang i-prevent. Halimbawa, smallpox, o kaya measles. Diba nakakahawa yan? Pero meron tayong mga vaccine para hindi sila para mabawasan yung severity na magkakaroon siya ng chickenpox or other diseases. So, this is yung definition ng endemic, pandemic, at saka epidemic. So ngayon, di ba, may coronavirus ngayon na nangyayari. We're in the middle of pandemic. Pero ano nga ba ang definition ng pandemic? So, ano ba definition natin ng pandemic? Pag endemic, alright, infection or disease that occurs regularly at low to moderate frequency. Pag epidemic naman, low pa rin siya pero sobrang bilis ng increase sa dami ng sa isang location. Pag pandemic naman, yan, kumalat na globally ang disease. So, bigyan tayo ng onting fun fact. Growing resistance to antibiotics. So, bakit natin kailangan itong pag-usapan? Well, these days, medyo mahirap nang patayin yung mga bacteria compared 20, 30 years ago. Kasi sobrang resistant na nila sa antibiotics. Bakit nga ba ito nangyayari? Dahil sa genetic resistance, global trouble, sobrang nating ina-abuse yung antibiotic to the point na nagiging resistant na ang ating mga bacteria to that. So, how antibiotic resistance happen? So, a lot of germs and some are drug resistant. So, mamamatay yung mga drug, yung mga non-resistant na, no? Ang matitira na lang yung resistant bacteria. Yung resistant na bacteria magmumultiply at saka na siya na magte-take over. Yung iba naman, some bacteria gives their drug resistance to other bacteria. Ibig sabihin, hinahawaan niya yung ibang bacteria ng pagiging non-resistant. Alright. So, paano siya kumakalat? Antibiotics is used on humans. As in, diba, napapansin nyo, pag may ubo kayo, yung iba sa inyo, nagmamadali para uminom agad ng antibiotics, hindi aalamin kung viral ba siya or bacteria. So, kaya nagkakaganon. Yung iba naman dahil sa livestock. Kasi, karamihan ng mga pagkain natin, ginagamitan natin ng antibiotics, so para hindi magkasakit ng animals. Antibiotics pollute the environment. So, paano natin ma-prevent yun? So, una, improve natin yung healthcare system natin. Linisin yung mga pagkain. Gagamitin lang ang antibiotics kung kailangan. Hindi kung kailan nyo lang gusto. Pag sinabi ng doktor na 5 days yung iinumin yan. So, vaccination, communication about health issues, paghuhugas ng kamay. So, yun are some things. Those are some things that you can do to prevent antibiotic resistance. Okay, let's move on to chemical hazard. Alright, chemical hazard. So, what is chemical hazard? So, there are growing concerns about chemicals that can cause cancer, birth defects, and can disrupt immune system and nervous and endocrine system. The release of chemicals into the environment depends mostly on the type of waste generated by the industry. So, para malaman natin yung severity ng chemical exposure, ito yung mga factors niya. Kung anong type ng chemical, kung gaano karaming chemical, gaano katagal ka na-expose sa chemical. Environmental issue, nature of job operation, and kung meron ba siyang ventilation sa area na pinagtatrabuhan. Kung nalalanghap ba niya ng maayos or exposed sila mabuti. So, chemical hazard, may iba't iba tayong type ng chemical hazard. May carcinogen, siya yung type na nakaka-cause ng cancer. Mutagen, siya naman nagkakaroon ng mutation sa DNA or nag-i-increase na magkaroon ng mutation. Teratogen is the chemical that can cause na sa mga fetus and embryo natin. So, paano tayo naapektuhan ng chemical hazard? So, pwedeng pababain ng chemicals yung immune system natin against virus and other bacteria. Yung nervous system natin, sinisira niya yung mga brain, halimbawa, sa mercury, arsenic, lead, na nagkakaroon tayo ng mga behavioral changes, death, learning disability. Endocrine naman, siya naman nag-change. Yung endocrine naman, affected siya by the chemical shape similar to the hormones that fit to their relative receptors, which messes with the hormonal imbalance. So, yung iba, ginagawa niyang super active yung mga agents, yung mga hormones natin, or yung iba, binablock nila yung hormones. So, dahil dyan, nagkakaroon ng issues with sexual reproduction, growth, development, and learning ability and behavior. So, yan. Ito huli yung definition ng pandemic and epidemic. So, how can we evaluate chemical hazard? So, scientists use laboratory animals, case reports, poisoning, epidemiological studies to estimate the toxicity of chemicals, but these methods have limitations. We can reduce the major risks we face by becoming informed and thinking critically about the risk and making careful choices. So, paano natin ma-determine ang chemicals ba siya or fat soluble, persistent kung gaano siya tumatagal, and biological magnification. So, how how can we evaluate chemical hazard? Toxology is the study of harmful effects of chemicals on human and other organisms. While toxicity is a measure of the harmfulness of a substance or ability to cause death. So, lahat ng chemicals na in-ingest nyo ng too much or the large amount of chemicals na in-ingest nyo ay nagiging harmful. Kahit vitamin C ba yan or vitamin D, kung ano man ang sobra ay nakakasama. So, halimbawa, yung grape juice, nakaka-apekto rin siya sa atin. Halimbawa, uminom ka ng alprazolam, which is an anti-anxiety medication. Sinamahan mo ng grape juice or alcohol. So, mag-a-amplify yung effect niyan, which can cause respiratory depression and death. So, ano bang factors na nag-lead sa hazardous? Hindi ibig sabihin, halimbawa, nag-overdose si matabang tao versus si maliit na tao, same lang ang chemical consistency na bago sa ma-overdose. Halimbawa, si payat, kailangan lang niya ng 500 milligrams of, let's say, olanzapine bago ma-overdose. While si matabang tao, kailangan 1,000 milligrams of olanzapine bago ma-overdose. And that's one of example. Another example, pag age. Pag mas bata ka, mas madaling na-absorb ng bata yung chemical. Or pag mas matanda ka, mas madaling hindi siya nagiging effective. So, another thing is yung chemical solubility. So, paano siya nagiging soluble yun? Halimbawa, pag fat soluble siya or water soluble, siyempre, iba yung pag-transport ng chemical sa katawan. And paano natin na-eliminate? So, here's one of the case study. Protecting children from toxic chemical. Toxic chemical in newborn's blood. Infants and children are more susceptible, as in, mas prone ang mga bata na maka-intake ng air, water, or food for their body weight. So, most likely sila yung naglalagay ng kung ano-ano sa bunganga nila. Halimbawa, mga babies, yung mga pacifier, may contaminant siya ng lead. So, na-affectan immune system niya and mental ability niya. Estimating toxicity. So, they do live tests on animals, dose response curve, lethal dose, and extrapolation of data. So, ito yung example of lethal doses. Kung gaano siya ka-toxic. So, halimbawa, super toxic. Ang example nun is less than 7 drops. Mamamatay ka na agad. Talagang toxic siya. Halimbawa, yung sa volantism or yung mushroom toxin. O kaya pag extremely toxic naman, 5 to 50 milligrams per kilogram body weight. So, bali 7 to 1 teaspoon siya bago ka malason. Kagaya ng potassium cyanide, heroin, atropine. Very toxic, 50 to 500. So, 1 teaspoon to 1 ounce. Halimbawa, mercury salt, morphine bago ka magkaroon ng lethal dose. Extremely toxic, 500 to 5,000. 1 ounce to 1 pint. Halimbawa, lead salt, sodium hydroxide, sodium chloride. Moderately toxic naman is, slight. So, you get the point. Just read this. So, ito yung mga where you can find various chemicals sa ating katawan, sa ating surroundings. Bawa, sa milk, meron kang makikita na dioxins. or sa hairspray, hepatitis. So, chemical is all around us. Anyways, moving on, physical hazard. So, physical hazard is one of the most common occupational hazard from common household problems to industry, halimbawa steel, bottling. So, pag sinabi natin physical, kung yun yung nakaka-apekto sa atin physically. Halimbawa, temperature, radiation, mga noise pollution, nakaka-apekto siya. So, another fun fact, so ito yung exposure, ano mangyayari sa inyo pag na-expose sa radiation. You'll have high chances of cataracts, problems with thyroid, yung DNA natin sa lungs is vulnerable to radioactive materials, pwede kang mabaog, pwede masunog yung balat natin with radiation. Pero, depende sa dosage pa rin ng radiation. Halimbawa, nagpa-x-ray ka, hindi naman siya masyado nakaka-damage. Parang wala talagang symptoms. Pero pag umabot ka na dito, ito, yan yung masama. Remember, yung sinabi ko kanina, anumang sobra ay nakakasama. So, sociological and psychological hazard. So, example na ay overcrowding, work stress, boredom, monotony of work, and isolation. Okay. So, how does environment impact? So, magtataas paano naapekto ng environment ang ating mga mental health? That's a good question. So what you can see here is our current status of mental health dito sa Pilipinas and how it's underfunded. And in fact, we need to invest in this. Hindi dolomite ang i-invest natin, guys. But rather a better facility, more doctors for that for our mental health. Actually, one of the most neglected branch of medicine. As in, hindi ko rin masisisi kung bakit siya neglected. Kasi it is heavily stigmatized in our country. Especially in Asia, where pag sinabi mo may mental health ka, sasabihin ng mga ibang tao sa'yo, naghihinarti ka lang, or gawa-gawa lang yan. But in reality, our environment plays a major role in forming our mental health. Talaga nakaka-apekto siya sa atin. And yet, we treated mental health like a joke. A lot of people don't want to seek help dahil kung mapapansin yung facility, talagang lalo kang masisiraan ng bait. They're neglected. Actually, minsan pa nga, they're treated worse than animals. It's very controversial, but it's for you to know what's happening to our society today. Lalo na ngayon, nagkaroon ng coronavirus and yung recent na bagyo na nangyari sa atin. So, talagang nag-i-increase ang anxiety ng tao, nag-i-increase yung depression. Since yung iba nawalan ng trabaho, wala na nga silang makain, lalo pa silang napaghinaan ng loob. Halimbawa, nawalan ka na nga ng trabaho dahil sa corona, tapos bigla pang nasira lahat ng ari-arian mo dahil sa bagyo. So, talagang maapektuhan talaga ang mental health ng isang tao. So, paano siya nag-ano? So, pag nag-pollute tayo, mag-i-increase ang chance ng global warming. Pag nag-increase ang chance ng global warming, magkakaroon ng natural disaster. Pag nagkaroon ng natural disaster, bababa yung oonti yung mga pagkain. Magkakaroon tayo ng stress kasi nasiraan ang bahay. So, there's a lot of things that will happen. So, lahat yan, interconnected yan, from physical, mental, and emotional. Halimbawa, pag nawala ng pagkain, magkakaroon ng malnutrition. So, maapekto ng developmental ng bata. Another example, pag maraming pollution, yung mga naiinom nating mga BPA or other chemical, so maapekto rin yan yung mga hormones natin, kagaya ng sinabi natin sa chemical chemical hazard. Or halimbawa, simple mawalan ka lang ng trabaho, it will really increase the stress and trauma sa isang tao. And lastly, site. So site is a natural hazard in terms of geographic location are naturally associated with natural phenomena or event leading to disaster. So example, Philippines, nasa Pacific Ring of Fire tayo. So predominant tayo sa mga earthquake and typhoon. O kaya pag-construct ng nuclear power plant malapit sa active volcano, which is not a good idea. So we want a stable place na hindi siya mala earthquake or resistant yung building sa earthquake. So we have 5 basic principles of environmental control. We have isolation, substitution, shielding, treatment, and prevention. So isolation. Ang definition ng isolation is separating the hazard from man in terms of either distance or time to prevent or to minimize contact. For example, glove box, kung saan nakalagay yung mga chemicals or gagamit ng isang cabinet para ma-reduce yung exposure. So basically, ilalayo, itatabi. An example, tayo ngayon, during coronavirus. Halimbawa, ngayong coronavirus, ano ba nangyayari sa atin ngayon? Lahat tayo naka-isolate. Lahat tayo nakakulong ngayon sa bahay to prevent the spread of virus. So, the kingdom of isolation, it looks like I'm the queen. Joke lang. But still, this is one of example of isolation. That we segregate ourselves to the environment or sa somewhere hazardous. Halimbawa, pag may contamination ng chickenpox, syempre pinauuwi mga estudyante na may chickenpox para hindi mahawa ang other classmates. Dapat ganun rin ginawa sa di ba, coronavirus. Nung una pa lang nagkaroon ng case, dapat nagkaroon na ng isolation. As in, day 1 pa lang dapat in-isolate na yung mga potential people with coronavirus. Para hindi na to naging pandemic dito sa Pilipinas. Next. Prevention. It is eliminating the effects or exposure to a hazard. Example, immunization. Yung mga vaccine. So, ano ba ang purpose ng vaccine? To prevent na magkaroon, halimbawa, sa mga chickenpox, binibigyan ng bakuna or rabies. Bago ka pa magka-rabies, halimbawa sa mga aso, ina-injectionan yung mga aso para hindi sila makapag-ano ng mga rabies. So, another thing sa ngipin, yung prophylaxis. Linilinis yung ngipin para hindi masira agad ang ngipin. As in, pine-prevent niya to further damage. So, substitution, it is the use of other material, products, or processes / operation method, machine, and other equipment instead of hazardous of one's modification. So, example, instead na gagamit ka ng pesticide, gumamit ka ng natural pesticide. Or gumamit ka, instead of carbon tetrachloride, gumamit ka ng trichloroethane, dichloromethane. So, pwede yung gamitin yan. It's basically substitution. Halimbawa, guys, ano yung sinuggest ng ating, I know it's a bad example, but ano yung sinuggest ng ating president? So, in case na naubusan ng face mask or naubusan ng alcohol. Di ba? Ang sinuggest ng ating president is to is to make buhos gasol to make buhos some gasoline sa ating face mask. It's really a dumb idea, to be honest, guys. Because I have seen some studies that try to emulate they try to use gasoline as sanitizer. It didn't work. So anyways, halimbawa, in, but a better example dyan is that they use merong study sa Japan that they use dishwashing soap to 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 have a substitute for the alcohol kasi nagkakakulangan nga tayo sa alcohol. So another substitution is gagamit ng UVC light to sanitize the surface area instead of mga bleach. So there are other ways to substitute materials in case na nagkakulang or mas hazardous siya sa environment. And lastly, shielding. Sorry, meron pa pala. Lastly, shielding. Halimbawa, what is shielding nga pala? Shielding is the setting up of physical barrier between the source of the problem or hazard and man. The equipment guarding will prevent workers from contact with moving parts. So, ang example nito, halimbawa, exposure sa radiation. Para ma-protect tayo sa radiation, gagamit tayo ng lead or concrete to block the radiation coming to us. More current example is yung face mask. Para hindi tayo ma-expose ng mga bacteria, gagamit tayo ng face mask para maka-shield tayo or PPT. So treatment involves the measurement to exterminate the existence of hazard through destruction. Halimbawa, bibigyan ng water treatment plants sa factory o kaya air pollution control. So, how do we perceive risks and how can we avoid the worst of them? So we can reduce the major risks we face by becoming informed, thinking critically about the risk, and making careful decisions. So ito yung mga evaluating risk. So nag-i-increase kung gano'n nag-i-increase yung deaths, annual deaths each year. So some example to risk from lifestyle: don't smoke, lose excess weight, eat healthy food, exercise regularly, little to no alcohol. So, do you have any questions for this class? That concludes our lecture for environmental health. So, if you have questions, just email me or message me. Okay? So, have a nice day. See you to our next lecture.